Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another True Crime Time with Junebug. That's me. And I've already had to reach for the spray bottle, and I just hit record. Rocket is just up, and he is ready to do rocket things. And by rocket things, he wants the tag slash cord of the ring light. But it's been a while. I forgot what I did last. Oh, I think it dealt with Larry. Was it Larry and Bigfoot? I think it was Larry and Bigfoot. Yes. Isn't he freaking crazy? This one isn't. Well, it's not. I think anyone who just be killing people is crazy, but this isn't like a Bigfoot told me to do it kind of situation. But since I have 7 whole pages of research I wrote down, we gonna get started. So today, because unfortunately there was many victims, unfortunately, I'm going to start the focus with the asshole slash criminal, and that is Anthony Eugene Robinson, or the shopping cart killer. Now, I saw this on a People magazine at a doctor's office, and I was like, my dumbass was thinking, how does one kill someone with a shopping cart? He doesn't use the shopping cart for the killing. In case anyone was like me and thought, it's not that way. Now this takes place possibly 2018 and 2020, but it for sure was in 2021. So this is definitely a newer case. I don't always tend to do newer cases due to just, the state of the internet. Things aren't necessarily always true. Things are still ongoing, yada yada. I didn't realize it was still going when I started this, and well, too far into it to go back. So now I always say the ages of the victims in case anything with children bothers you. No children are involved, but the ages of the victims are about 30 to 54. And this takes place in Pennsylvania, Virginia, and DC. Now the status, I don't know if there's a teensy tiny silver lining, because there's like 4 that are solved, 2 that are in progress, and 1 that was attempted. There's a lot going on. This is one of the biggest cases I've done in a while. So let's just get started with our asshole of the hour. So Anthony Eugene Robinson was born September 3rd, 1986, somewhere and to somebody. I don't care, he sucks. I didn't feel like doing research on it. Now, I don't know anything about his upbringing, don't care to, but I guess he used to work in waste management and was on and off with being homeless. I saw he has lived in New York City, Maryland, and Virginia. He supposedly has 2 children. I saw the son died as a baby or infant, maybe even a toddler, under 5, and he had a school-age daughter, so that could be anywhere from 5 to 17. Another thing to note about Anthony is it was said, quote, he had a remarkable absence of criminal history, end quote, which I don't know if that makes things better or worse, but it's just how it is. So now, enough about him. I'm going to try to go in order of the victims of like chronologically when it happened, not necessarily when it ended, like it was discovered. The first victim, and she is a suspected victim, which I wouldn't be surprised honestly if he was involved, but her name was Sky Allen. Now the only info I could really find for Sky was she was possibly born May 17th of 1987, and her full name was possibly Sky Alexandra London Allen. She had met Anthony on a dating site, which will be something you hear me say a lot, unfortunately. But they began dating, and he would move in. I put quotes around that because I don't know if it was just part of him being like a couch surfer or on and off being homeless, because she still lived at her mom's house, so he kind of like moved in to her room. So I don't know the full situation there. Eventually they would get engaged. It was stated that almost like no one in Sky's family liked him. Now, I don't know the lead up to this necessarily, but on February 14th, 2018, Sky's mother, because remember she lived with her mom, would find her in her room, unconscious and struggling to breathe. So obviously 911, getting help, that whole situation. But she unfortunately would later pass that day due to, it was said, cardiac arrhythmia. I hope I said that correctly. Now that's according to the doctors. Now her mom doesn't believe this is her actual cause of death. She even straight up asked Anthony if he killed her daughter. He obviously said no, because I feel like generally anyone would say no to that, even if they are the killer. But she does feel, since this happened in 2018, things didn't really start happening with Anthony until 2020, 2020 through 2021. She does think even more strongly now that he had something to do with her death. So the case is still ongoing. I don't necessarily know if it's like they're fully investigating it. I feel like they should. But since Sky was cremated, unfortunately, it makes things a lot harder to maybe see. I don't even want to say makes it harder. It makes it, I feel like, almost nearly impossible to determine the cause of death. And unfortunately, Sky was only 30 years old. So now on to the second victim. Her name is Monica White, and she is the one attempted victim. So she is still alive. So I'm obviously, since she's alive, I'm not gonna like try to dive into a backstory or anything about like her upbringing and stuff like that. Like, she's alive, but she, at the time she met Anthony, had recently gone through a divorce at 53 and joined the dating app Tagged, which I had never heard of, but she joined this dating app in the fall of 2020. Now, she and Anthony connected on there, and they seemed to hit it off. They lived in different states, so pretty much they only communicated on the phone, and she said he seemed relatively normal. But things started getting a bit weird because he would start, like after they've been talking, obsessively calling her all the time, and I guess it didn't deter her too much because she would eventually agree and they would meet in person in January of 2021 at her home, and she lived in Pennsylvania. Now that is when the red flags really started popping up. So she goes, picks him up, I think from the bus stop, and one of the first things he says to her is, please don't judge me right away because, quote, I don't like when women reject me, end quote. Okay, sir. I don't think people necessarily like to be rejected, but you normally don't tell someone that. And then I guess they just went about their day, and then, eventually night came, possibly, and things got a bit crazy in the bedroom, according to Monica. She said there was tying up and choking, strangling. So she told him to stop. He did, thankfully. But I guess he was pretty upset. I just don't even want to imagine it. Now, he also, during this little time he spent with her, he asked to live with her. And that was the first time they ever met in person. He asked to live with her. Thankfully, Monica said no. But then, obviously, he goes back home. Then a month later, he comes back out to see her for her birthday. And she knew this, that he was coming out. And when he arrived, his present was stating that he had bought a one-way ticket and that he's just staying with her, essentially. She was not a fan, but she tried to enjoy her birthday. But unfortunately, Anthony just is not a great guy, and he got super drunk at her party. He would pee in her bed, I believe while she was in it too, whilst they were trying to sleep. Now, as said, her family did not like him, which I cannot blame them. They started fighting. He was just fighting with everybody, it seems like. Not necessarily physically, but with words. Now, she just paid for him to go back home. She's like, I don't care that you bought a one-way ticket, you're leaving. He did not go home. He had, the ticket to go home, but he did not go. And 2 weeks later, when he's still in Pennsylvania, don't know where he's staying, it ain't with Monica, he asked to meet her at a motel and offered her $500 to do so. She said no, thankfully, and they never spoke again, which is probably the reason she's still alive. Because we will learn with the future victims that motels and hotels were part of Anthony's, MO. I think it's MO. And I guess Anthony's never addressed these like allegations, but he's not really the most reliable guy. But she's done plenty of interviews if you want to learn like more about her. And I do want to state from like the rest of the victims, there's going to be some overlap, so I'm sorry if the dates are just kind of, there's a lot of dates, there's overlap. I'm sorry in advance. Oh, he's a baby. Here, do you want to, you can, hey. Do you just want to chill? You can chill. You're being very needy right now. Okay. Anyway, sorry about Rocket. We're on to now the third victim, who is also a suspected victim. But like, once you hear the details, like, come on. But as of right now, still, she's a suspected victim. But her name is Sonia Champ. Now, I could not find much on her, but she was 40 and a resident of DC. And on September 7th of 2021, so we're jumping ahead a bit here, a passerby noticed a body under a blanket in a possibly Target shopping cart around 11:30 a.m. and they immediately called 911, which, thank goodness. Now we're getting into why he's called the shopping cart killer. And unfortunately, that body was Sonia. She was pronounced dead at 12:15 p.m. Now, her death wasn't linked to a particular killer, but it was marked as a homicide on her death certificate. But now we're obviously, I'm not involved in the process, but now authorities are kind of connecting her to Anthony. Because 3 years after this, like after her being found, Anthony's DNA was found on her body. So not looking great. And it was said the likelihood of it being anyone else's DNA was 1 in 22 nonillion. I'm gonna have to put up exactly what that is. It's a lot. So seems pretty likely that Anthony was her killer. So I don't know why she's not 100% confirmed victim yet. I get it that they do have to go through the whole process and stuff, but I mean, come on. I also couldn't really figure out how her and Anthony were like connected. I don't know if they also met on a dating app or if they somehow met in person. It was a by chance thing. I don't quite know how they connected. Now the fourth victim is Cheyenne Brown, and she is our first confirmed victim. Did not see a ton on her either, but Cheyenne Ursel, I think, Ursel Brown was born August 6th of 1992 in DC to her mom, Nikadra Brown. I don't know anything about her dad. Cheyenne would have a son named Juan, who was 7 years old and had another baby on the way when she met Anthony. And they also met online, and that was in August of 2021. Now, she invited Anthony to visit as well as meet her family in DC. Now, she also lived with her mom, her son, and 18-year-old sister Amelia. From what I could find, the visit went bad, but are we surprised? No. Somehow, I put that in quotations because let's be real. But somehow, Anthony saw Amelia only in her underwear. And she screamed because she was like, what the heck are you doing? I'm changing, I think she was. And he just sucked. There was also a cousin who was over at their house visiting when Anthony was also visiting. And the cousin kicked him out that day. And he kicked him out the next day when he tried to come back. However, sadly, Cheyenne was reported missing on September 30th of 2021 after last being seen getting on a Metro bus. Turns out she was going to meet up with Anthony. Now, her family was very active in the search for her. I want to say, I feel like out of all the victims, this family was really involved. Now, like the cousin who kicked Anthony out originally even noticed on Instagram Anthony's mugshot, and he put it together. He's like, oh shit, this is the dude I threw out of the house. So he contacted Cheyenne's mom, and then she would contact the police with this information that my daughter knew Anthony. And Anthony doesn't seem to be doing some good stuff lately. Unfortunately, as you probably could have guessed, her body was found on December 15th of 2021 in a plastic container near a shopping cart near the Moon Inn Hotel in Alexandria, Virginia. Her body was in such bad shape and condition, they could only recognize her by her tattoo. Now, due to this, the official cause of death is unknown. Like if it was blunt force trauma, asphyxiation, no air situation, they don't know what it is. And she was only 29 years old, and she was pregnant with her second child. And unfortunately, she was not found alone in that container. So that leads us to our fifth victim, who is also confirmed, and her name is Stephanie Harrison. Now, Stephanie Ann Harrison was born November 9th of 1972, and she was from Redding, California. I saw she had a sister, and I saw, not in every article, but I did see in a couple articles mention she was possibly schizophrenic, but I honestly did not see much on her. But I knew she had a daughter, and she was a newer grandmother. She was described as beloved, kind, and very helpful to others. Possibly around the end of August of 2021, she went on a trip to the East Coast, and she unfortunately would stay at the Moon Inn Hotel, the same one as Cheyenne, and it was thought she wasn't there to meet Anthony. It wasn't believed that they had a prior connection, that she just happened to be staying there at the same time, and it ended badly. Like, really badly. Because Stephanie was never heard or seen from again. And I don't know the exact date, but September was the general consensus. Now, I don't know exactly what happened next, especially knowing that Stephanie and Anthony didn't really have a prior connection that I'm aware of. But we know she was also found deceased on December 15th, 2021 in the same plastic container as Cheyenne. Now, it took police weeks to identify her due to the late stage of decay. I think she was farther along than Cheyenne, but I'm not entirely sure. Now, also like Cheyenne, due to this, her cause of death is technically unknown, and she was only 48 years old. Now, the sixth victim, who is also confirmed, is, I think it's pronounced Aileen Redmond. Now, Aileen Elizabeth Beth May Redmond was born June 30th, 1967 in the city of Harrisonburg, Virginia, to Sharon Sherry Vandevander Kissamore, sorry if I just butchered that, and John May. And I saw Dad pass when she was very young. I couldn't quite figure out if he ever lived to see her be born. I'm not entirely sure. And I saw she had at least one sister and one brother. I don't know much on early life, but I saw her mom would remarry, and he unfortunately would also pass away. Did you run into the wall? Buddy. I know. Beth, or Aileen, she would go on to marry Shannon Redmond Sr., and I saw they had two daughters together. There was Amanda and Jessica. And it was said that Aileen was sweet, she was hardworking, and very dedicated to her family. And unfortunately, her husband would pass away in 2017. And at the time of her passing, they had 4 grandkids. Now, I don't quite know how she met Anthony either. It obviously could have been a dating app, but at some point, she would tell her family she was going to a football game with her friend named Ant, who turns out was Anthony. And her daughter, one of her daughters, mentioned never having heard of him before. And unfortunately, that was the last time she was seen alive. And this was on October 24, 2021. Now, her body was found with hands bound in an undeveloped lot near the Howard Johnson Motel in Virginia on November 23rd of 2021. So almost exactly a month later. Now, due to decay, again, the exact cause of death is unknown. It seems like it was violent, unfortunately, but they don't quite know the exact specifications. She was 54 at the time of her death. And like previous victims, was not found alone. 15 feet away was the next victim. So that brings us to the 7th and final, that we know of, victim, who is also confirmed, and that is Tonita Smith. Now, Tonita Larice Nita Smith was born June 23rd, 1982, to her mom Lolita Eloise Cookie Smith in Albemarle County, Virginia. She had 2 brothers named Rodney and Dean. Now, I don't know about her early life or of any marriage or anything like that, but she would go on to have 6 children. She also had a nephew named Sage Smith, who went missing November of 2012. And I thought that name sounded very familiar, and it turns out, because I really like Kendall Rae covered Sage's case a while ago. So if you want to check that out, Kendall Rae has one. And I say nephew because that's what I first saw, but I believe Sage was like gender fluid, so I saw some things say niece or nephew. Just want to put that out there. Now, Tonita's nephew went missing 2012. Her mother would pass away on May 3rd of 2019 at the age of 60. And I also don't know how Tonita and Anthony connected, but I'm guessing it was online as well, because his phone records did prove that he knew her. And she went missing November 19th of 2021. The last location from her phone was the Howard Johnson Motel or Hotel in Harrisonburg, Virginia. She was found dead, as I mentioned, 15 feet away from Aileen on November 25th, 2021. It was confirmed the 2 women had been killed at separate occasions, but neither cause of death can be pinpointed due to the state of their bodies. She was only 39 at the time of her passing, and she left behind 6, I assume, heartbroken children. That family, like all these families, have obviously had to experience something no one really should have to experience, but this family losing Sage over 10 years ago now, and then losing her mom, so their grandma. So her kids lost a cousin, a grandma, and then their mother in like a 10-year span. Like, I can't even imagine. So sorry if that was a bit choppy and things obviously overlapped, and I don't know all the details about each victim, but I like to give a little bit of a background on each of them. But we've now discussed the 7 victims. Now we have to go back to the asshole himself, Anthony, and his capture. Now, like I said, things do overlap a bit and can get a bit confusing, but I think the first tip off, like the thing that put him on police's radar, was when they watched security footage at the Howard Johnson Motel Hotel to learn about missing women like Tonita and Aileen, because Tonita's phone last pinged at that hotel. So they checked the surveillance camera to start looking for clues. They saw Aileen going into Anthony's room at around 6 p.m. and being brought out wrapped in sheets in a shopping cart around 4 a.m. Now, similar footage was found for Tonita, including blood found on the bed sheets in their shared hotel room, which I personally think maybe should have washed the sheets better. I don't want to, maybe it's with strong enough chemicals, it's easy to detect blood. That's what I'm gonna tell myself to make myself feel better, that they just didn't keep bloody sheets on the bed. After seeing this, the police would then access Anthony's phone and find that after each murder, Anthony, this is a bit graphic, I'm sorry, he would watch explicit videos featuring women who matched the appearance of the victims he had just killed. So after killing Aileen, it was said he was looking up explicit videos with and watching videos with women who looked very similar to Aileen, and same with his other victims, which I don't like that. So Anthony was arrested on November 23rd of 2021, and he denied ever meeting the 2 women, because he was only being arrested for Tonita and Aileen at this point, but he was then shown the video evidence from the hotel motel, And he changed his story because you really can't deny that. And he said he saw both of them before bed take a white pill and woke up to the both of them having died from overdoses. I don't know if I believe that, sir, because he said that he dumped their bodies so he wouldn't get in trouble, because he just assumed they would frame him killing them. I don't understand his logic. That's all I have to say. Now, drugs were found in both women's systems, but it wasn't anything close to something that could kill you. Because if it's just a singular white pill, there'd have to be a lot of bad shit in a small little white pill. So we're gonna jump ahead to the trial because this homeboy obviously went to trial. They got a lot of evidence on him. Let's just kind of hit the keynotes of the trial. So Anthony was represented by Louis Nagy. He would plead not guilty, which I'm honestly not surprised. They would try to use mental illness as a defense for him. I don't know if they necessarily went for not guilty by reason of insanity. I didn't see a mention of that, but I do know they tried to use him being mentally ill for a defense, I guess. Now, he was being charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of concealing dead bodies, and 1 count of aggravated murder. And then later, a count of aggravated murder of multiple people. Because remember, at this time, this is just for Tonita and Aileen. Now, the trial started January 2025, so this year, for the murders of Aileen and Tonita. Now, the jury took about 30 minutes to decide he is in fact guilty, and they recommended the max sentence for each charge. Now, he was supposed to be given his sentence this past September, but it has now been pushed to December of this year. So it's coming up, and I hope it doesn't get pushed again. I don't entirely know why it was pushed in the first place, but it was. But he is being held at the Rockingham-Harrisonburg Regional Jail. And that is the case of the shopping cart killer. Honestly, there was very little to do with shopping carts, but that's his name, I guess, in the media. I do apologize if this was a bit kind of all over the place. It's not my best work, especially when I have like 5 cars every minute driving past. The heater came on. Oh, there's another one. And Rocket yelling at me and knocking things off of tables. So sorry in advance. I have no idea what I'm covering next, but let me know what you think. Is there smarter law people? What's the hurdle they gotta get for Sonia? What hurdle do they have to get over for Sonia to just being confirmed victim at this point with his DNA found on her? Because that's the one I'm like, really? We're still questioning it? I know, due process and all that, but like, well, what's gotta be done? Can we write a letter or something to someone? So, yeah, that he sucks, to put it lightly. Tell me what you think. Sorry in advance. Well, no, sorry that things were a bit jumbled, and I will list what graves I can find in the description box so people can leave a nice comments only, or you can donate like flowers or a tree in their memory. But that's it. I will see you maybe next year. I don't know. I would prefer not to be next year, but I don't know. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye, guys.